Are you a runner who's been frustrated in the past that whenever you try to increase speed or increase your distance, you just get knee pain and then you get frustrated because you're not able to run? You avoid going to the doctor because, let's be honest, they're just going to tell you to stop running. So you start Googling knee pain in runners and you want to know if you have IT band syndrome or runner's knee. If that is you, you need to keep listening. If you get achy knee pain in the front of your knee, running up hills, going downstairs, squatting in the gym, if it even starts to hurt when you stand up after sitting at your desk for a couple of hours, then this training is for you. If you get sharp pain on the outside of your knee, especially when you run downhill, this training is for you. If you want to learn the best strategies to overcoming knee pain with running, this is for you. You probably started doing everything you could to avoid going to the doctor. So you ice, you rest, you stop running, doing the thing you love, and then you get some special knee sleeve or brace. You try kinesio tape or a strap that goes around your knee. This all looks great, and it actually looks kind of cool if you get some funky kinesio tape, and you might even feel better in the short term. But the problem is when you start running again and building up your long runs, that same pain comes back, and now you're just running through it because you don't want to stop again. In this training, I am going to unravel the mystery of whether your knee pain with running is due to runner's knee or IT band syndrome. This is actually the video and audio version of 2 of our most downloaded Spark Healthy Runner ebooks, so you can get rid of knee pain and not have to stop running. In these resources, I share with you specific tactics to start running faster, further, and without stubborn knee pain. These have been the true, tried, and tested strategies that have kept all the runners that I work with on a one-on-one basis running during their recovery, and by finally being able to say, peace out to knee pain for good. So if you don't have time to listen to this full training, trust me, I want you to be here and listen to this, but go ahead and download your free IT band syndrome or runner's knee ebook by going to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com and get the resource and watch the replay of this training when the time is right for you. I'm going to also drop that link in the show notes. So go ahead and download that now. The best part about these resources is there's a ton of supplemental visuals, video content, specific actionable exercises of how-to videos of how to do the things that we're going to be talking about for you to implement in your training. And in today's training, I am going to go over, is it runner's knee or IT band syndrome? What is Patellofemoral Pain Syndrome? Where would runner's knee hurt? What does IT band syndrome feel like? How does IT band syndrome start? Is heel striking causing your knee pain? And then, if you stick around long enough, I'm going to share with you the single best exercise that will begin to fix both of these conditions, regardless which one it is. And knee pain is the most common injuries runners face. And I see you. I've been there before personally. I've helped hundreds of runners with these conditions throughout my career. My name is Dr. Dwayne Scotty. I'm a running physical therapist, a coach, an educator, and my mission is to preserve the health and longevity of runners everywhere by allowing them to get stronger, run faster, and enjoy lifelong injury-free running. I'm the CEO of Spark Healthy Runner and the creator of the Healthy Runner podcast. And 7 to 9 out of every 10 runners listening to this right now are going to get injured. And the most common body part to get injured is the knee. And the 2 most common injuries are runner's knee and iliotibial band syndrome. And trying to get over knee pain can be overwhelming. If you don't have a plan from a healthcare provider who gets runners, you are told to stop running for 4 to 8 weeks, or worse, even longer. You're endlessly icing your knee after every run. You constantly are buying new running shoes to find the ones that don't hurt your knee. You are paying crazy high amounts of money on copays, high deductible plans to see medical providers who all have different opinions, some who just give you pills, some that tell you might need an injection, or some that say that, if you keep running, you're just going to get arthritis in your knee, or your body's not meant for running. And then your running eventually gets slower. You can't go for long runs anymore. You waste time chasing fads and products that don't actually help your knee pain, and you guess instead of following a process. And that leads to frustration, feeling constantly overwhelmed with the amount of information out there. And I don't want that for you. So let's unravel the mystery. Do you have runner's knee or iliotibial band syndrome? I'm going to break down 4 different characteristics to help you determine if you actually have runner's knee or iliotibial band syndrome. So the first thing we're going to talk about, and I'm going to grab my knee model here. So for those of you who are listening to the audio version of this, you might want to check out the video version. So the biggest thing that is an easy way initially to tell if you have runner's knee or iliotibial band syndrome is, where would runner's knee hurt? Or what is the pain location? And if you have runner's knee, or what we call patellofemoral pain syndrome, so that's the medical diagnosis there, or you might have even been diagnosed by, maybe you saw a medical provider who took x-rays and they saw some wearing away of the cartilage. They called it chondromalacia patella. It is pain in the front of your knee. So right over the kneecap area. So we have your femur bone here, your tibia bone down lower. You got your kneecap, which is called a patella, and it's actually pain in the front of the knee. And it's usually hard to be specific on where it hurts. It's going to be kind of in this area. And, most runners who get this, they're like, yeah, my pain kind of hurts in this region. And they kind of grab the front of their knee. Now, where would IT band syndrome hurt? The IT band actually runs down the side of your thigh. So the small muscle, tensor fascia lata at the top, is in the front outside part of your hip. The band, it's connective tissue that comes down the whole outside part of your thigh and actually inserts down onto the tibia. So onto the front outside part of the tibia. And where most runners actually get pain is where this little bony bump is on the femur. This we call the lateral epicondyle area. This is usually where runners who have iliotibial band syndrome are going to get a sharp pain right on the outside part of their knee. So this is very localized. It's specific. It's on the outside part of your knee. Whereas patellofemoral pain syndrome is typically the front, and it could also be the inside part of your kneecap region. All right, so that is the first determining factor, is pain location. Number 2 is going to be, how does it feel? So what does iliotibial band syndrome feel like? Or if you're having this type of pain, how would you describe it? Right? So what are you feeling? If you have patellofemoral pain syndrome, this is a dull, achy pain. And you might also report some clicking, some popping, or what we call crepitus. It's like crunchy kneecaps. It's like, snap, crackle, pop is happening underneath your kneecaps there. As opposed to iliotibial band syndrome, or IT band syndrome, is going to be this usually sharp, localized pain. And in severe cases, when runners get this, let's say after going for a 16-miler during marathon training, or an 18-miler, it could even be described as like a stabbing pain, that it just stops them in their tracks, especially when you're running downhill. And this is a sharp stabbing pain. Could it be achy later on, hours later after your run? It could be. But then runners also report a feeling of tightness with this condition. So this is more sharp, stabby, maybe some underlying tightness sensation, as opposed to patellofemoral pain syndrome, which is going to be dull, achy pain, and you might have some clicking and popping of your kneecap. All right. The third differentiator between these two conditions is, how does IT band syndrome start? Or how do both of these conditions really come on? Like, what is in the medical, world, we call this onset? What's the onset of pain? And for patellofemoral pain syndrome, this is very common in our novice runners, our beginner runners who are just starting out. Maybe they're doing like a couch to 5K program, or maybe they're training for their first 5K. Or you could actually be an experienced runner who has taken some time off. So maybe you took time off, during the COVID years, and you just are starting to get back now. Or you took time off because you started a family, right? And you're finally starting to take care of you and actually go back outside and start running again. So this is going to be more common when you start getting into running as a beginner, or you just start getting back into running after any time period off, and you're ramping up your running mileage, and now you start to feel this achy pain in the front of your knee. As opposed to iliotibial band syndrome, this is usually going to be more common in our experienced runners who are building up to either half marathon distance, but even I see a lot more commonly is even the marathon distance, because it's usually not mile 2, 4, or 6 that iliotibial band's going to like creep its ugly head. It's usually going to be these longer long runs. And this is like very classic for those going after their first marathon, or maybe even their second marathon, and they really didn't do the proper base training that we've talked about in the past, and with our 6-step Spark Healthy Runner blueprint on how to build a strong running body to tolerate the demands of marathon training. And you're feeling good in the beginning of training, you build up to double-digit mileage, and now you got a 16-miler in your training plan. And that's when it rears its ugly head. And then you try to go for an 18, and now it's so painful you literally can't finish the run. So this is a common story that I hear a lot from many of the runners that I help who have iliotibial band syndrome. So it is usually, and especially if you run in a hillier area, and especially if you have a lot of declines. So it's more going down the hill versus going up. And then we contrast that to actually patellofemoral pain syndrome. I find a lot more of my runners have pain running up a hill. And it just puts a little bit more stress to that patellofemoral joint, so the kneecap between the femur. All right, so the fourth and final differentiator that's going to really help you determine if you have iliotibial band syndrome or patellofemoral pain syndrome is going to be running form. And is heel strike causing your knee pain? So for some of you who have kind of thought about this, or you heard some information on, should I be a heel striker? Should I be a midfoot striker? Should I be a forefoot striker? And this is something that I evaluate on all of my clients. I do a detailed running gait analysis, give my clients the exact instructions on how to take videos of themselves in different planes, and we analyze it. We go frame by frame and analyze their running gait pattern. And this is actually best done virtually on video. Common misconception is most people think they need someone to look at them in real time. And if I see a runner who is actually physically with me, we record it, and then we actually look at the computer screen to break it down frame by frame, because no one can actually do a accurate, thorough gait assessment without actually going frame by frame, because running is just too fast for our eyes to be able to process everything. So I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of thousands of gait videos, right? And we see some runners who are heel strikers. So when they strike the ground, their heel hits first, right? And commonly, what we tend to see for runners with patellofemoral pain syndrome is usually, yes, they are a heel striker. However, it's not the heel strike that is the main problem. It is the fact that when their foot hits the ground, their foot and ankle are far out in front of the knee when they strike the ground. So we call this overstriding. Or it could be thought of as like running with like the parking brake on. So you're kind of kicking your leg out in front of you before your heel hits the ground. And when your heel hits the ground, this causes a lot of ground reaction forces. So the forces that come up from the ground transmit up the shin bone to your kneecap joint. And that really increases the amount of force to your knee. So it's not so much the heel strike that's the problem. And it's rare, but I have seen a few who are big heel strikers and they don't overstride. But especially, again, if we're thinking about runner's knee, patellofemoral pain syndrome, like I mentioned before, it is usually the novice runners. And usually novice runners don't have the best running form yet because you really haven't figured out what really works for you, right? You just go out there and you run and you don't think about it. And you're like, this is hard. So I just need to like keep running. And you're not really thinking about your form too much. So overstriding is a common running gait deviation that I tend to see with my patients who have patellofemoral pain syndrome. And if we contrast that with our IT band syndrome patients, what I see most often when we look at their running gait analysis is looking from behind and looking at the level of the hips when the foot hits the ground and we transition through what we call mid stance. I look at, are the hips level or does the hip drop down and cause what we kind of refer to as this dynamic valgus alignment to the knee, or the knees go in. And because the knees go in, kind of like this, then that puts a lot more stress on the outside structures. So the IT band. And the key is actually looking up at the pelvis and seeing if you have this pelvic drop or hip drop, we call that. Or some might refer to this as a collapser. So when you're running, your foot hits the ground, everything collapses down. Your hip drops, your knee goes in, and your foot and ankle might, what we call overpronate, might get really flat. So if you've ever been told that you got knock knees when you run, or you're like a big overpronator, a lot of times it's actually coming from the hips. So as Shakira says, the hips don't lie, guys, right? So if those hips are weak and those side hip muscles are weak, then that's going to cause that hip drop. And that's the most common issue that we see in runners who have iliotibial band syndrome. And it is the most important thing to actually fix iliotibial band syndrome. So those are the two big differences that I really see in runners and kind of consistent gait patterns. So just if you've ever been told, or if you actually just have a friend, significant other, literally hold your iPhone in front of them and you run directly across the iPhone. They don't move at all. They just stay right there and you run kind of at a right angle, right? 90-degree angle past them. And you can just like take that video and then just go and have them taken in slow-mo actually. And then you can just go frame by frame and see like when your foot hits the ground, is your foot out in front of your kneecap? Or how it should be is when you land, your knee is actually over your foot. And that would be the proper mechanics. And sometimes, and kind of going back to the whole heel strike kind of dilemma, is if you do land with more of a midfoot strike, that is usually going to help decrease overstriding. So it's not necessarily the heel strike that's bad, but, and Doug Adams, who I had on the podcast, who is a PT who specializes in gait analyses, all the way back in episode 117, kind of shared this in that episode, is it's the overstriding that's the issue, not so much the foot strike pattern. So if you can correct the overstriding, you may do this with actually changing your foot strike pattern and even changing the heel to toe drop in your running shoe, which for some who are overstriding and have this stubborn patellofemoral pain syndrome or runner's knee, then that might be something I might recommend, is to decrease the heel drop just a little bit. Don't go to a zero drop. Don't go from like a traditional 10 millimeter heel to toe drop shoe, like an Asics or a Nike, and then go right to an Ultra or a zero shoe where you're like, totally no heel drop, because then that's going to create a lot of foot pain. So you got to do this gradually, and maybe shifting the forces just a little bit, take it away from the knee and transfer it a little bit to the foot. But always keep in mind that we're just transferring forces. So if you don't have the strength built up in your Achilles and you haven't been doing calf strengthening for months, if not years, to really develop the strength and resiliency in your Achilles tendon, then that could create problems down below, right? So it is this balance, and you have to determine what is right for you. But kind of going to that fourth point is really the running form that I tend to see for those who have patellofemoral pain syndrome is different than those with IT band syndrome. Now, coming up next, guys, I'm going to share with you the single best exercise that you need to start implementing now to get over your knee pain, regardless which condition. But before I do that, if this training has actually been eye-opening to you, and you're surprised about some of the things that I mentioned about patellofemoral pain syndrome, IT band syndrome, and that you can actually run, not need to stop running. And if this has been helpful to kind of differentiate between these two conditions, I want to help more runners like you. And one way that we can do this is, if you're listening to this on the podcast, copy the link, share it with a running friend. And if you're listening to this on our YouTube channel, hit that like button. It will just allow me to continue making content just like this for you, so we can help other runners continue doing everything that they love about running, going out there for those mental clearing miles and enjoy it, staying injury free. It'd mean the world to me if you can just hit that like button. Please and thank you. And now getting into the single best exercise that you can be implementing, regardless if you have IT band syndrome or runner's knee, is one that you all can actually start implementing today, because it doesn't require any equipment, and it targets one of the most common muscle imbalances in those that have runner's knee or IT band syndrome. And it is an exercise that teaches your body to learn how to activate and isolate the side hip muscles, or the gluteus medius muscle, or the most important running muscle we have. I call this exercise the humbler, because it will humble even those of you who think you are rock solid strong. So you can learn how to do this exercise by actually downloading the free ebook resource attached to this training, and then you can save the instructional YouTube video. It is also one of the exercises in my popular 5 simple mini band exercises for running. So you can check that out on my YouTube channel as well. I've talked about this in previous episodes, but it is a great exercise to really activate, teach your body, teach the brain, send the signals down, activate your gluteus medius muscle, because remember, the hips don't lie, guys, just like Shakira says, and you feel a great burn with this exercise. And then I always transition it to standing, because as I mentioned before, remember how I mentioned iliotibial band syndrome is usually caused by that hip drop? This corrects the hip drop. And then runner's knee, all of the interventional literature we have out there, and we have a good amount in the physical therapy world for patellofemoral pain syndrome, is strengthening the hip muscles and the quads. So that's quad strengthening in addition to hip strengthening. And you'll get this all in the ebook that I mentioned before, of how to do that and what treatment looks like and how do we prevent these conditions from coming back again. But both of these conditions, you're going to be focusing on the hips. So that is the single best exercise that you can be doing, not just hopping down in the machine in the gym and doing the inner and outer thigh machine. Because, and I've talked about this many times before, your hip joint is at a different position. You're sitting, your hip is near a flexed position, and that's actually when we compensate with that IT band muscle, the TFL, when we're in that position, as opposed to when we're running, our hip is in neutral. You're standing. You're not sitting when you run, right? And now we need to learn how to activate the side hip muscle, the glute med muscle. So when you stand on one leg, you're like rock solid. All right. And then that's why we do a lot of single leg exercises as runners to help get us strong and prevent runner's knee and iliotibial band syndrome from coming back. So guys, let's recap what you learned today. In this training, we covered, is it runner's knee or IT band syndrome? We talked about what is patellofemoral pain syndrome, and it's really that irritation of the kneecap and the cartilage underneath the kneecap and the femur bone. We talked about where would runner's knee hurt? In the front of the knee, right? And then we said IT band syndrome is going to be the outside part of the knee. And then what does IT band syndrome feel like? It's that sharp stabbing pain, very localized in the outside part of the knee, as opposed to runner's knee is going to be that dull, achy, might have some clicking and popping in the front of the knee, maybe the inside part of the knee. And then we talked about the onset and how does IT band syndrome start? It's usually going to be on those long runs as you got in a half marathon or marathon training cycle, as opposed to runner's knee is usually going to be the 5K runners, or if you're just starting back after a long period of time off. And then we talked about running gait form and is heel striking causing your knee pain. We talked about how it could be a contributor, but it's really the overstriding. That's the main point. And we talked about the difference between kind of runner's knee. Usually you're an overstrider, typically, not always, right? Caveat there. And if it's IT band syndrome, then it's usually due to that hip drop or collapsing gait pattern. And then we talked about my single best exercise for knee pain while running. So don't forget to download your free runner's knee or IT band syndrome ebook that contains bonus video content with specific actionable exercises on how to overcome these conditions. Just go to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com or click the link in the show notes to this training. Now, runners, remember, there are 6 parts of your running journey that need to be optimized so you can run strong and last long. What are those parts? Mindset, strength training, your run plan, the nutrition and hydration that you put in your body, the recovery steps that you take from your runs, and then the race strategy. And when you execute Spark Healthy Runner's 6-step plan for treating runners with either patellofemoral pain syndrome or IT band syndrome, you'll not only get rid of your stubborn knee pain, but feel more confident in getting stronger and faster, and you'll stay healthy and enjoy the process of running again. And you may be thinking that you can never run pain-free again, or you might think that you can really continue running, or you can't continue running while rehabbing your injury. And you might think you need to go get it fixed, go to rehab for 8 weeks, and then start running again. And that is what Lindsay thought before she signed up to work with me within our signature Spark Healthy Runner one-on-one coaching program. Lindsay was struggling with runner's knee as a new pandemic runner while training for her first half marathon in 2021. She was using online resources to cobble together some exercises, but still had knee pain running her half marathon. She reached out to me after taking 3 weeks off of running because she didn't know what to do at this point. Her main goal was to put her running clothes on 4 to 5 days a week because running brought her so much joy. Can you relate to this? Lindsay is smart. At the time we were working together, she was going through her dissertation for her PhD, but she knew that she needed a plan. And as she said, she is a really good student. And I can relate to that as well after getting 4 college degrees, right? You're a good student. And she was really just lacking the structure in her running and the strategies to get rid of her knee pain. And after working with me as her running physical therapist and coach, she was not only able to get rid of her knee pain for good, but then went on to PR her half marathon. So we got her out of knee pain, and then she ran her second ever half marathon and ran it a lot faster than she did her first. So since that time, Lindsay has also continued to grow in her running journey. And now she gets guidance from Coach Whitney on our Spark Healthy Runner team, and she's crushed more races, doing some adventure stuff. She's getting faster. She's running longer. She's just enjoying running and having it a part of her life and something that she has that can continually challenge herself, running some races as an adult onset runner. And you can actually listen to Lindsay's full story because I had her on the podcast to share her story because I know it is such a common injury many of you are facing. So check out episode 130 on the Healthy Runner podcast to hear from Lindsay in her own words of what she experienced working together. Or Dawn, who didn't run for 5 years due to IT band issues, which just like totally breaks my heart, honestly. There's no reason that you shouldn't be running for 5 years because of knee pain. Both of these conditions that we talked about today are completely fixable. They are not like career ending injuries where you can't be a runner anymore. And after working with Dawn for 16 weeks, she not only got back into consistent running 4 days a week, but then went on to train for her first ever marathon at the London Marathon. So this was such a huge achievement for her. She actually lives in right outside of London in the UK, and we worked together virtually and got her out of knee pain. And she just got the confidence and got the right exercises that she knew that she can actually get stronger for running, and then went on to do this epic London Marathon experience. She raised some great money for an organization that's near and dear to her heart. So that is just, these stories, guys. And let me just share with you one more. Or Becca, who I think about, who is a younger runner. She's in her 20s, and she had numerous cases of runner's knee and IT band syndrome. And she even had some plantar fasciitis as well. And she was desperate to be able to get through a training cycle without getting injured. When winter 2022 came around, she had developed a bad case of runner's knee after she ran the New York City Marathon. And she decided to reach out to me after listening to the podcast episode that I did on runner's knee. And I provided Becca with the mobility and strength exercises to get stronger in the areas that were really causing her ailments. So I really identified what her specific problem areas were. And then she just did like totally phenomenal and actually like blew any like expectations I had out of the water. This is definitely more on the rare case, and it is due to her underlying fitness that she already had built up, her age certainly. But within a little over a month, nearly all of her pain had subsided. And in fact, during the second part of our 16-week program, she actually went on to be able to run the Disney Marathon and then 3 half marathons without knee pain. So these are just 3 examples from the hundreds and hundreds of runners who have implemented this Spark method of overcoming knee pain to grow as a runner. And I just want to let you guys know that there is hope and you can run without knee pain. You just need to get the specific strategies. And I hope this has been educational for you. It's been really great sharing this with you today. Again, my name is Dr. Dwayne Scotti, and my mission is to save the lives of runners everywhere by allowing them to enjoy lifelong injury-free running. I'm the CEO of Spark Healthy Runner, and if you want to fast track your recovery and get clarity and focus like Lindsay did, Dawn, or Becca, that is exactly what we do with our high touch point one-on-one Spark Healthy Runner coaching program, where I am your running physical therapist and coach all in one. Or you work with one of the coaches on our team if you have a local PT that you're already working with. And then I serve as more of the PT consultant guiding the process and aiding communication between your local PT, our coaching team, and really what I would design for you from a run standpoint. Learn more about our Spark Healthy Runner signature coaching program and schedule a call now by going to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com. Lastly, if this was helpful to you, could you guys do me a favor? Copy the link. Share it with a runner who has knee pain and they've been struggling, because you can honestly help save them from getting unnecessary injections, braces, or worse, having to stop running for months on end. Will you do that for me as an audience? I am trying to save the runners from the frustration of having to stop their stress relieving activities that they love and going to a healthcare provider who just doesn't get runners. I want our community to continue enjoy lifelong injury-free running. So thank you in advance for doing that. As always, let's maintain a strong mind, a strong body, and let's just keep on running. Until next time.